This is Grant Wood. He made a wonderful painting called American Gothic. Today, I'm gonna recreate that in my own style. This is gonna be called Cuban Gothic, in representation of my personal culture. Today, I'm gonna be showing my process as requested by a wonderful viewer. Thank you very much. And I'm gonna show you a little bit about how I like to draw, but here's the thing, it's not always the same. It actually changes depending on my mood, depending on the things that I have with me. So for example, sometimes when I'm in the mood of just going straight into painting, I find it a little bit annoying and tedious that I have to do the sketch first. And I don't always even do a sketch, but when it comes to things that are a little bit more complicated like this, that have more paper and require more paint, I find it important to just plan just a little so I don't waste my materials. I don't necessarily consider this the most effective way to sketch. This is straight onto the watercolor paper, and there's going to be a lot of erasing that I do, and I don't even necessarily use the main blocks shapes to create a composition. So sometimes I have to erase quite a lot in order to fix the composition. I don't recommend this. The best way to sketch for me is using something like a digital art software like Procreate or Photoshop, something like that, just because you can alter and change things without having to worry about erasing and thus damaging the paper that you're working on. Other times I have used a regular sketch pad and then transferred it, but I find it a little bit harder because I don't have a transfer light pad. And the only downside about doing a digital sketch beforehand is the fact that you do have to trace it. But one way to go around that is to just use what is it called? Snapping my fingers here. Think. Projector. Yeah, using a projector. So as you see, I'm running a little bit behind. I'm gonna start talking about the painting now because you're probably thinking like, how and what is her strategy with this? Let me be quite honest. Because I normally don't draw darker skin complexions, I had a lot of trouble doing this because I just didn't think of just going straight ahead and adding a darker painting or darker paint onto the canvas. I was kind of working just doing like the very light painting first and then darkening it up as you see here. And that was actually just me having this fear of how to execute something that I hadn't really necessarily tried before. This process was actually quite stressful for me just because I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea what I was doing here. And you'll see that I add blues to this to the highlights, but then they're also the shadows, and there's really like this disconnect. Eventually the highlights end up being this blue, which I usually use for the shadows, but yeah, there was a bit of a disconnect with this, and I found it quite hard to try to replicate something that I just generally don't usually work with, which is darker skin complexions. And I really wanted to add a darker skin complexion to really represent the countryside Cuban culture that I really respect and admire. And so yeah, I struggled a little bit, but I think as you see, things start to progress and they start to make sense. Now, here's the thing. When I did these highlights, I did them very boldly. I did lines. Eventually, I will fuse them in. And the way that I fuse colors when it comes to gouache is I use a very light hand with a damp brush, not wet, because you're going to mess up the gouache and it's going to look splotchy. But using a very light hand with a damp brush, you work very as if you're feathering the paper. You feather it into each other, the colors into each other. So that's what I will do. You will see it in a little bit that I do that just to make it a little bit more realistic and not just have those prominent highlight outlines. That's not really my style. If it's your style, it looks, yeah, I mean, I respect it. I like it, but it's not the style that I want to achieve. So yeah. Drawing the countryman was actually going to be the hardest part of this painting, just because I just didn't know what I was doing. In other areas where I do know what I'm doing, it just becomes easier for me because I've practiced it before. And so it just makes it a lot easier and more comforting for me. I like to have like I like to work a thin line between comfort and discomfort. I don't like to just be stressed out when I'm painting. Nonetheless, this is something that you have to do when you're painting if you want to grow and achieve stuff. And here I am being very proud of executing that character, and then I will be moving on to the other character, which is like a little old lady, Cuban lady, that is kind of representative of a lot of Cuban ladies that I've seen in my life or talked to. And yeah, so let me just go around and talk about the painting itself and why I decided to do this. So I love what I believe to be the message that American Gothic, the original painting, sends. For me, it's almost like there's this simplicity and beauty in being simple, in the rural life, in a simple, slow living life. There's this beauty and this silent but relaxed view of life that is so enticing to me. I don't necessarily care for the rat race of the city, even though currently I do live in the city, and I would like to, hopefully, God willing, we'll make that change soon. But yeah, that's a different story for a different day. But yeah, I just love the simplicity of the countryside and the way that people are so unashamedly, I said that wrong, but please forgive me, unashamedly themselves. Yeah, I love that. And I guess that's why I am drawn. I'm also drawn to it because I just like the style of Grant Wood. I truly do. And if you have not seen his work, take a look at his work. It's beautiful. It's stunning. Especially his acrylic landscapes. They're stunning. As you see by the daylight, I'm working well into the afternoon. And in this piece, I actually filmed it working in the afternoon, in midday, and also throughout the night, just because I really wanted to get it done. And I find that the lighting was okay towards the nighttime. This time does have the reflection of the blinds, and really there's not a lot that I can do as far as this, because so my blinds are they're in a weird way, so I can't really like, I'll try to fix it, but I can't make too many promises. But yeah, I worked very much, relentlessly throughout the day and the night, and it took me a couple days to finish this painting, but I just was very eager to finish it. It was one of the bigger paintings that I've done that wasn't acrylic. So this painting is actually 11 by 15 inches, and it kind of stresses me out a little bit to know what I'm doing, because I don't want to, again, waste gouache paint. Even though gouache does tend to go a long way, just a little of it tends to go a long way, it's just very stressful because the tubes are still small and they do tend to cost a lot of money if you're buying decent gouache. And the gouache that I use here actually is Turner Designer's gouache. I've used that one. The only other gouache that I've used are just whites but I just find Turner's Designer gouache to be excellent. They're creamy, they're so vibrant, they're wonderful to work with. My only drawback with it is the actual tubes. They're plastic, but they actually tend to be a little bit hard to open, but that's just besides the point. It's okay, you could get through that. Also, I want to state that you can't really tell very much when you're looking at it from this angle, but now you see there's a little bit of a disproportionateness to the face of the older lady. You're going to see a little bit lower when I lower it a little bit, you're going to see it more. I try to fix that with gouache itself. I just, paint around to slim her face and stuff with the background. And that's the beauty of gouache, is that you can make a mistake and you can repair it. And if you add too many layers, just water it down and wipe it away with your brush, and you can start again. So that is a great advantage when it comes to gouache, is that you can alter the painting itself and you don't have to ride or die with it like you would with watercolor or other mediums that just are the way they are. Working on the background after doing the characters, I think I'm pretty much not going to do that anymore and just work on the backgrounds first, because I find that when you have to be very particular to not get in the way of the character design and, you know, the finished pieces of the character, you do tend to waste a little bit more gouache than if you were just to go a little bit with like a larger brush and just paint through one stroke and then fix it up, put, you know, paint over the character and do that. I find it more strategic and just more effective and efficient to do the background first. And in this video, what I did and what I will do in the next video that I am currently working on is I watered down the background first to just cover a large piece of area, and then I add details to it with a thicker layer to create that vibrancy and not leave that watered down effect, because sometimes when you water down gouache too much, that becomes dull. It makes the painting look dull, it makes it look chalky, and you'll see this in a video that I am having next. I don't leave it like this, hopefully, because I'm still working on the painting, but you'll see that the first few layers where you water it down, it does tend to look kind of dull and chalky, but that is, again, it's corrected when you use larger layers and you are more effective. Yeah, I don't know what I was trying to say there, but let's just go with it. Yeah, this is a little farmhouse, you know, a little like type. This is a very like true to the architecture of those houses that you find like in the countryside in Cuba, and I really enjoy them. They're a little bit like, I've never seen anything like this before, because they actually tend to be, when you look at them straight in front, they tend to be kind of small, but they're actually very long width, usually. And what happens is there's like this long hall that goes across, and there's bedrooms towards the side of it, and so everything looks from the front, it looks like a small house, but when you turn to the side, it's actually a long house. And I find that to be very interesting. I've never seen houses like that before, but yeah, that was just a little observation that I have on my visits to Cuba when I have gone to visit family and friends. I didn't add a lot of detail to the background when it comes to the palm trees and stuff. I didn't feel it was necessary. And what I did is I used this gold and silver color mixed in with a little bit of brown, just so that when the original piece is turned to the side, you can see that glimmer of the silver and the gold, which I love so much to add to like these paintings. This one was a Luke gouache paint, and I wasn't too crazy about it. I didn't feel like it was very transparent, actually, the gold and the silver. I don't know if I will be using it. I don't know, I will be using it, but I don't know if I will be buying it again. I did use the Arteza watercolor, metallic watercolors. I used those on the previous painting that I did, and you could check out the video. It's a portrait painting that I did in gouache. I used those over the gouache very carefully, not too wet of a brush, and it just looked stunning. When you turn it, you can definitely see that glare of the metallic. So I think I'll probably be using that to do the rest of the paintings that I work on. But yeah, this wasn't too bad. It was okay. It just didn't deliver what I specifically wanted to deliver, and I had a very much like specific like feel that I was trying to get out of it. There's something about pearlescent, like just pearlescent what do you call this? Pearlescent paint that is just so stunning. But yes, this is the finished piece. This is the Cuban version of American Gothic. I shall call it Cuban Gothic. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this painting. I hope that you guys create many wonderful paintings and have a great time and enjoy the process of painting. And again, like I say in every other video, keep painting. Bye.